What is your favorite underrated bands?
Well, for me, if I'm going to start, favorite personally is 18 Visions. They were influential in that Orange County metalcore scene, like starting in probably like late 90s, like 97, all the way up on through like 04. That was when the band started to get big. All the bands you're going to hear at like your metal festivals nowadays, not your top billing bands, but once you get to the smaller font, those bands, probably like 9 out of 10 of them, you can trace back some of their influence to 18 Visions. They were started off just completely, you couldn't understand a word they were saying. But then they slowly got more into more metal, less core. And I think so many bands that you'll hear nowadays are going to be influenced by them. So I'd definitely say them. That band, Motionless in White, they're not my cup of tea, but they're big nowadays. Their band name is named after a song by 18 Visions, Motionless and White. They chose Motionless in White. So they've definitely had a big influence. They were one of the first bands to sort of give themselves a look. One of them is a hairdresser now, and they were working at, I think, a Paul Mitchell studio before they made it big in the band. So they would wear a button-down shirts and like tight black ties. And yeah, that was sort of, I think, what changed them, what made them stick out. These other bands then slowly started to be like, oh, I guess if we have a look, it'll sort of have an influence. So them, and then I just think a general band that I think is extremely underrated, maybe not metal, 9 Inch Nails. I don't know if you would agree, but yeah, no. I think they released an EP in '89, and then that changed the scene. I think they didn't get the mainstream success that they would have because of bands like Nirvana and other bands. But yeah, no, they are very popular, but I think when they were putting out their best material, they weren't even anywhere near the levels of success that they should have had. But yeah, what about you, man?
The first one that comes to mind is definitely Iced Earth. Because we were talking about Pirate Mall earlier.
Yeah.
Pretty much no one I know actually likes them.
Yeah, dude, classics.
Except for I almost did die with somebody while saying them. But those people I know would not really care for them that much.
Yeah,
but
no, completely underrated.
What is the other one? Well, metalcore definitely Bleeding Through for me.
Oh, Bleeding Through, yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense. All Bleeding Through, Throwdown, and 18 Visions, they all like shared members. It was like some like weird like orgy stuff going on there. But I think it's Brandon Chipetti or Javier Van Hus. They were 2 of the members. And I think Javier Van Hus was in all 3 bands, Throwdown, Bleeding Through, and 18 Visions. The main guitarist from 18 Visions, Ken Floyd, I'm pretty sure before the current vocalist in Throwdown, he was the vocalist prior to them. And then Brandon Chipetti, the lead singer of Bleeding Through, I believe he was in 18 Visions before. I'm probably getting those mixed up.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Another one that's now getting bigger is Acacia Strain, for sure.
I'm going to see them next month, and I'm so excited. But yeah, no, they are extremely underrated. Wormwood, that album.
Next year, whole album. Very excited.
Yeah, no, I need that. But yeah, that album changed the heavy scene. The sound on that album, the guitars alone, just, I think it's going to be hard to keep up the quality of such an album like that. And then the guitarist, like the main songwriter, I think he left after Wormwood came out. But yeah, no, Acacia Strain, their influence on the current heavy music scene is like totally unappreciated.
Very much.
Yeah.
And then in regards probably to death metal, I'd say Obituary, which I feel like not many people know. But yeah, definitely for sure one of my favorite bands that I got to see with another band that I feel like is underappreciated, which is Death. Started from, I believe, in Tampa, Florida. That guy unfortunately passed. He had a brain tumor, but that band I think was just as influential to death metal as Slayer was, because it went from thrash metal more towards like a death metal type feel. And a lot of these bands, I feel that people either just don't know, or when they hear metal, they just assume it's like Metallica, and I forget, Slayer.
Yeah, no, those are bands.
Not
both...
to throw anything at you. Anthrax. Old school Anthrax.
Yeah.
Fucking Death Angel. Like, all these bands from, like, you know, either the Bay or from, like, Tampa, Florida. Like, all these bands that, like, really put metal on the map. You know, more so than... I love Metallica. You know, I finally did get to see them.
Yeah.
Twice, actually.
Damn.
I've seen Slayer, like, 10 or 11 times. Saw them on their last Supposable tour. But I'm sure they're going to come back.
Yeah, I mean, every band does that. Kiss has done a final tour, I think, probably 10 times. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you on Death and Obituary. I barely have listened to those bands, but I know that they definitely are influential because you see people wearing shirts from those bands all the time. Like, especially Death, that logo is iconic. I barely know maybe 5 songs by them, but I know they have had a huge influence because when I'll go see some of my favorite bands, I've seen them wearing Death shirts many times. So yeah, no, they're
That's right.
way under the radar, and I'm part of the problem. I don't even know them really, but yeah, no.
Start listening to them.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Black Label Society.
Black Label Society, yeah, no. They're another band that I think just suffers from being the band they are and the time that they are. I think right now is not the time to be a heavier band. I think unfortunately right now pop and rap are a lot of what runs the airwaves, but also in the heavier scene there's not too much change going on. There's not many breakthroughs in styles. Like, most genres are already established, and I feel like not many bands are like broadening their horizons of what they listen to. But yeah, no, there's so many underrated bands. Like, I heard this the other day, and I totally forgot about Sepultura.
Yes.
But I think because they're from South America, and I don't think they sing in English, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm forgetting. Okay, yeah. But they're an extremely influential band, especially in the doom scene. Like, that whole subgenre of music that I think people just think of Cannibal Corpse, and that's about the only band they think of. But you're not going to have a whole popular scene like that with just one band. So I think, yeah, doom, a lot of those heavier 90s bands especially, don't get nearly the appreciation that they should.
I mean, a lot of 90s metal kind of is trash, to be honest. But
You're not wrong.
just couldn't put it out there.
No.
They kind of try to experiment a lot, but I think who started to come out in the early 2000s, besides like new metal bullshit. But I feel that for me personally, somebody that's like, you know, been influential. Can't even say the word right now.
You know.
Oh my god.
Trust me, I can just break out some different languages. We're good.
But probably Behemoth for sure. They're big from like, I think a lot of European metals really where it's come like down to, where like America couldn't. They're so cookie cutter with like, this is what we are, so we're not going to grow. We're not going to get outside the the box. You know, somebody that's actually from San Diego, Carnufex, has definitely proven that they can go from death metal to deathcore to black metal.
Yeah.
And kind of create their own type of style. And
well, like I had talked about earlier, gateway bands, Carnufex is definitely one of those, because they can play on, I think they were on Warped Tour last year. They can play on your Warped Tour, and then they could probably tour with any of your heaviest metal bands out there, and they're going to bring people in. They're a gateway band, and they aren't going to get the appreciation because I think they cross borderlines of genres. Yes. So the purists in each genre aren't going to appreciate them for the sound that they have, because they're just like, oh, they're not heavy enough. Oh, they're too heavy. I can't understand their vocals. So no, I agree with you 100%. Carnufex, yeah, no.
Also probably Dying Fetus, Underthought Metal.
Yeah.
Still one of my favorite bands. Most disturbing shit I've ever heard.
A lot of those bands with, unfortunately, extreme imagery or names that are off-putting. Unfortunately, a lot of those bands I feel like always are going to be underrated just because the entranceway into those bands isn't as accessible because it's just harder to see, hypocrisy. I don't know what I'm saying, but yeah, I think it's maybe a little more off-putting. Like, I come from a very conservative and like religious backed home, so I think that's why Slayer wasn't an influence for me. I'm like, I'm gonna go to hell if I listen to Slayer.
It's a song about that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I think, unfortunately, a lot of bands that should have a larger audience and bigger influence don't, because the imagery or the lyrics are a little scary, I guess, to the normies, as we call it. But yeah.
I think if you're listening to metal, you're probably not normal in the first place.
Oh, far from it. Very awkward. Very weird. Yeah,
my personal experience.
All my favorite people in life are far from normal and far from boring, and probably have something wrong with them, but it's what makes me love them.
I mean, I have a ton of offensive shirts. It used to be like my product statement, I guess, if I were to like be a product myself. Cradle of Filth, which is not a band I give two shits for anymore, but they do have one that says Jesus is cunt.
Oh yeah.
It's an amazing shirt. Basically it shows a nun taking a crucifix and fucking herself.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Was seeing Black Dahlia Murder the same night across the street. Adele was playing. And I see this couple.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my god, like they're wearing black shirts, but it says like Adele, and I wasn't paying attention. Like, I was like, we're at the same concert, and I look almost like, that's
Black
that's
Dahlia Murder.
Yeah,
It's my
it was
favorite.
not a fucking good time. So more offensive the better for me.